Hello programmers, time for the next step of creating our dog's age calculator program. In the previous step we created the basic structure for our application. We put the initial documentation in, we put in some descriptions, and most importantly these are the steps that we have to create. We have to declare our variables, get our input, do our processing, and give our output. So we have to start with, now let's define our variables. When you look at your IPO chart, human years, scaling factor, and dog's years. So all variables need to be defined. The program needs to know what type of data it will hold as well as what it's going to be called. Examine the input and output of your IPO chart to identify these variables. You will come up with some more working variables along the way, but let's start here. Now after I create this part, we're going to take a side step and we're going to look at different ways that we can create and initialize variables, because there's several different techniques. Alright, so defining the variable. Looking at our IPO chart, let's go back here, and the ones that we see are human years, dog's years, and scaling factor. So human years, what do we want it to be? Well, let's go back here and take a look at this. I want to go to my next slide. Your basic data types for holding data are bytes, short, integer, long, float, and double. There's two more that are not on here. There's character for single characters, string, or not string, and boolean for true or false. For a byte, 128, negative 128 to 127. Short is negative 32 to 32,000. But for us, we're going to use integer. We're not too worried about memory in this program, and by standard you use int unless you get into very specific applications. If we needed to have decimal points, we would consider float and double. But for this one, we're going to use int. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to do int, okay, dog's age, and let's make sure I get them right. So, and then also human years. So let's do human years, and let's do int dog's age. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to initialize it, because dog's age, we're going to by default say it hasn't been born yet. Human year, I'm going to get from the user. I'm going to ask them for human year, so I don't have to worry too much about initializing that. It could be good to go ahead and do it. It never hurts to initialize a variable. All right. Now there are a couple working variables. I need to be able to get input from the user. So to do that, I have to use a tool that's out there. So I go up to the top and I do import java.util.scanner. So that goes right up below package, and it's import java.util.scanner. Scanner is a tool that we use to read from the input. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do scanner standard in. This is just kind of a naming convention that's been used forever. Equals new scanner system.in. Now there's a lot going on here. I have to ask you just kind of accept for right now that this works. But this is an object, sorry. Oh, that's an object. It's a scanner object. I'm going to name it standard in, STDIN, because the standard input is by default the keyboard. I'm going to create a new instance of that object, and it's going to read from system.in, which again is the keyboard. So in declaring my variables, I have scanner, standard in equals new scanner. I have human year equals 0, and I have dog's age equals 0. I need one more. I need scaling factor. Scaling factor can be int. Now this is different. So I could do scaling factor equals 7. And there's sort of nothing wrong with that, but there is something wrong with that. This is supposed to be something called a constant. It never changes. So the rules are different if you want to identify a variable more as a constant that'll never change. We still want it to be an integer. But the naming convention is very different. We want to know that it will never ever change. So this one becomes scaling factor. And then more importantly, I don't want it to change once it's established. I want it to be final. So to create a constant in your program, define it as final, give it a data type, give it a name, follow a different naming convention, and then give it a value. And as you go through and write your program, sometimes it's kind of a pain because you have to do it when it really seems silly. Like in this one, we're only going to use it one time. But as a professional, especially as time goes on, using constants is critical. Okay, so if you're comfortable with this and comfortable declaring variables, you can skip the sidestep video where we create and initialize and declare a bunch of other ones and go on to the next step, which is the getting input from the user. But if you want some more practice with declaring variables and ways to do it, watch the next video. Thanks.